Hello, and welcome to the Mr. 8000 YouTube channel. My name is Chris, and today we're going to talk about my preferred way to scan film. Now, I actually wasn't planning to do this video. Let me explain. You may have watched some of my other videos going over various film cameras, and you may have picked up that recently I started camera scanning, and for a time, things were good. Doing camera scans was pretty straightforward. Setting up is pretty easy, and I had all of the gear to do it already, mostly. And the results were solid. And above all, doing it was really, really quick. But it eventually got me to thinking, do I really like camera scanning over dedicated film scanners? Because I do have a couple film scanners at this point. You may have again also noticed that in some of my previous videos. I've used the Polaroid Sprint Scan 4000 Plus, I have the Nikon Coolscan, I even have the Plustek 8200, which was used quite a bit. So I sat down and I stewed a bit, and I stewed a bit more. Then I decided to actually scan some film because I'm doing a video for the Pentax ME Super, which at this point, this video may come out after or before, but either way, I needed to scan film. Stewing is fun and all, but scanning film lets me show you images. And that's when I actually learned. I don't think I enjoy camera scanning over dedicated film scanners. Not film scammers. Don't know what that is. It turns out I actually like scanning, camera scanning over my Plustek 8200. The Nikon Coolscan, however, is this thing right here. It's very small, very lightweight, probably, and not at all heavy. And honestly, the Coolscan is worth almost any hassle to overcome to use it. For those of you who are unaware, the Coolscan 8000 is a multi-format scanner, able to scan 35mm film up to 120. It's not as light and small as I made it out to be. It's actually big and quite heavy, especially on my lap right now. And it's old. It's from the 2000s, or the early 2000s. But it has a scanning resolution of 4000 dpi, and that results in 118 megapixel images from a 6x9. or around 21 megapixels in full-frame scans. So let's get into my love of the Coolscan 8000. Why hate on the Plustek 8200 AI? Let me explain. For a time, before camera scanning, I bought this, the 8200 AI. Or is it the I? No, it is the AI, because it had the extra software with it. And for the most part, it's a pretty modern film scanner. They still make it, they still sell it. It's quite small, it has a USB interface. It's still supported by relatively modern software, and it runs on modern Windows. Setup for this scanner is easy peasy. I liked that. So, for a while, I was using this to scan a lot of my film camera sample galleries. However, while setup was easy, while support for modern OS is nice, I personally find the overall experience pretty abysmal. The 8200, this thing, does not have a motorized film tray, so you can't batch scan. So you're stuck sitting there for every frame of film, which is a pain. But if that was it, this video might not exist. I'd probably still be using it. I'd be stuck in front of my computer, waiting for the scans, and then manually pushing the film tray, one photo at a time. And honestly, that kind of is okay with me. But I also realized with this scanner, I don't like Silverfast. I know, it's a pretty well-regarded program when it comes to film scanning, but I don't like it. And I don't like it when it's paired with this scanner. It's even less fun. Now, the program itself, despite being supported by modern OSs and still being supported now, feels dated. That part doesn't bother me hugely, but I do want to say it right out the bat. But the thing that did bug me was no matter how I set up the program with this scanner, which it came with, I never really got the film to look the way I really wanted it to right out of the gate with the scan. Even playing with all the sliders, playing with all the settings, I ended up having to do a significant amount of tweaking after the fact. Now, sure, with the 8200, the D-Max is not bad, which means the scanner is able to keep up with pretty demanding films and its dynamic range. But without sitting through and scanning a couple times and tweaking the images a lot, I overall wasn't that happy with the output of this scanner. And this is when I started to notice that camera scanning could be a pretty good solution. I noticed that when I did do camera scanning, I was able to get the film to look the way I wanted it to look from the get-go. Things generally happened much quicker after I got the film shot on the camera scan. The final nail in the coffin for me, though, was that using this, again, the 8200, the theoretical scanning density is 7200 dpi. That sounds like a lot, but I almost never used it. This was almost always stuck at 2400, 3200, or 4000 dpi to retain sanity. And even at these resolutions, the 4000s or so, scanning takes about 2 to 3 minutes. And so that means for a roll of 36, I'm probably going to spend around an hour and a half just scanning film when it comes to pushing the film carrier one frame at a time, unloading the film, reloading it in the carrier, having a look at the film when it comes out, all that stuff. Easily an hour and a half just sitting there, scanning, pushing the film, scanning. The end result was that a lot of time was just spent on my butt scanning. And then time would be spent further with the software editing the files only to be mildly satisfied. So in the end, not my favorite scanner. And as I said, naturally, when I tried camera scanning, compared to this, it felt a lot more convenient. I mean, what do you gotta do? Grab a tripod, grab a camera, grab your lens, grab your film holder, grab your light. It sounds like a lot of stuff, but really, once you do it a couple times, you set up the camera gear, you take your test shots to see that everything's all lined up, and from setup, scanning, to tear down, an entire roll can be done in around 30 minutes. At least I find that I can do it in around 30 minutes. And then I just edit the files like a normal RAW file with the extra step of the film inversion. Unless I'm shooting like slide. I don't have much of that though. So for the most part, yes, more or less just like editing regular RAW files. And the bonus was that the camera scans always tended to come out overall looking better than the Plustek files. And this led me to thinking, why do I bother with a dedicated film scanner? I have a Plustek 8200. It's the newest scanner I own. It's honestly probably pretty good because it is new, it's still supported, all that business. But really, I was just soured on this. I'm not camera scanning or film scanning in isolation to just this device. As I said, I kind of have probably more film scanners than normal. Enter the Coolscan 8000. The Upfront Suck. Okay, so before exploring the Coolscan 8000, I just want to say that before I did that, I actually had two whole scripts done on camera scanning. The virtues. I was about to sing camera scanning's praises to the world, when out of the corner of my leaky brain, I remembered I have a hulking brick of a scanner, Coolscan 8000. Now, I actually didn't use it that much, and you'll notice that in the sample galleries. Most of the times in my older film reviews, I'm not using this scanner. Oh, all the times, because I tended to use this scanner only when digitizing medium format film, something I haven't shot for in a while, which was also exacerbated by the fact that I now have digital medium format cameras. So I don't feel the need to scratch the medium format itch with film. However, something compelled me, kind of recently, to revisit the 8000. And it had been so long since I'd used my Coolscan 8000 that I forgot. This thing needs a Firewire 400 cable and a computer that can plug into Firewire 400. And so began the long walk up a creek filled with turds and hopes that past all the poos, we'd land on something glorious. But then I remembered, at some point, I picked up a MacBook, 2009, the plastic body one. It had a single Firewire port. So I cracked it open. I put a modern SSD inside, and I installed Windows 7. That's the best one. And with that, I installed Nikon Scan. I plugged it in, and I noticed my Coolscan was failing every single attempt to autofocus. And the noises it made when I fed the feed tray in sounded like a whale being speared by an angry bearded fellow. It was not nice. That's when I came across an interesting website. I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but shitengel.com. I'll put a link to that in the description below. If you have a Coolscan 8000 or 9000, this is the site you want to look at for any troubleshooting. Shitengel is the heroic savior of Coolscan 8000 and 9000 series scanners. This site is a repository of guides, tips, and tricks for how to use the boxes of pure Nikon Coolscan glory and how to keep these things going till the end of time. So I figured there's no harm in trying these guides now. Mine was already acting up. It wasn't scanning. So, using those magic fabulous guides from this magical fabulous person, I cleaned the mirror on the Coolscan. I lubricated the rails for the film carriage assembly. And overall, I had this thing apart and back together in a few hours. With the guides, it actually wasn't too bad. They're very well written, very well thought out, and again, an amazing resource if you happen to have one of these scanners. And I realized at this point I was now sinking a lot of time, a lot of hours into a project that might disappoint and might not be that much better than camera scanning. But really, it would just be in the hopes that it would be better than the Plustek. And I also was thinking, it's about time. I should shoot more medium format film this year. Plus, I just bought a motor grip for my 645 Pro TL. And that thing looks awesome. At any rate, thanks to you, your lordship Shitengel. Because in the end, I was able to solve a significant amount of issues that the Coolscan had. No longer did the autofocus fail. No longer did feeding the feed tray sound worrying. It only sounded mildly unsettling. It still does a bunch of hums and whirs, but those are apparently normal. So now I was ready to scan some film. I loaded up some 120, and I realized I had some serious bending in my images, and I nearly gave up. I was really sad because I put so much work into this scanner only to have the image come out looking like poo. But then I did your interweb sleuthery, and I actually forgot because I knew this in the past, and I remember this from scans of old after I read about it. But the CCD in the 8000 is a 3 CCD array. And if you use it as such, there is a fairly common issue with a lot of these Coolscans where you get banding. But there's a solution for this. You click Superfine Scan, and it reduces the scanning array to using just one CCD array to scan your images, and all the banding goes away. But it increases scan time a lot. A lot. However, because this scanner, the Coolscan, can batch scan, you just hit go and you walk away. You come back and things should be good. The peak of excellence. Finally, after all that work, I got a good scan. No, not a good scan, an incredible scan. Not only did the scans that I did, I liked, but honestly, using the scanner itself, despite the software being a bajillion years old, despite me needing to dig out a computer from another age, it was nice. The software itself, I find, is nicer than Silverfast. Things are straightforward, you click stuff, you can make a bunch of presets very easily, the layout makes sense, and all the settings are where I expect them to be. And it honestly, when you're using the scanning software, the Nikon scan software, it just feels like you're using a raw file editor. One that admittedly takes time to pull up said files because the scans take 1,000 years, but it's what it feels like. So with that, we emerge from the Upfront Suck onto the peak of excellence. And at this point, I was glad I sunk all that time and effort getting the Coolscan up and running, finding a computer, getting a new operating system installed, gutting the scanner, re-gutting the scanner, and working through its weird quirks. Although, now that I'm saying it out loud, maybe this is just all sunk cost fallacy. Maybe I'm just rationalizing, but here we are. I'm very deep into this video, so we're going to keep going. At any rate, I now had an idea of what to do to make this scanner work for me. And I loaded the 35mm film tray, which, for negative film, can fit 12 frames at a time. And I started scanning. And like I said, scan times are real long. Even with my basic single pass scans, a bulk scan of 12 images can take an hour or so. But also, it's bulk scanning. So all I really did was press scan, and then I left. And I came back, and my images were ready. And what this really means is that with the ability to scan 12 at a time, the actual amount of time that I'm spending sitting in front of my scanner and doing things is very low. Loading film, clicking a scan, all together is kind of minutes. Sure, I gotta leave it for a couple hours, but I have other stuff to do, so it doesn't really bother me. And the end result is that the images that I find out of the scanner are amazing. The colors look good, almost perfect out of the scan. And it's almost like Nikon knows what they're doing with color. And the scan density, although yes, it's only 4,000 dpi as opposed to the Plustek 7200, the Coolscan's 4,000 dots per inches feel like they're doing a lot more work. And with that, I've now unconvinced myself that camera scanning is for me, at least for 35mm and medium format. And time permitting, chances are, from this point on, if we're doing film camera reviews or reviews with film, they're gonna all be scanned on the Coolscan. And here's why. While camera scanning can be done very quickly, and overall, I actually think the quality of both are quite close to the Coolscan's output. And again, honestly, working with camera raw files is easier, and I can use actually modern software, and it is a little more flexible than the Coolscan. I feel like the Coolscan captures the film feel a bit better. I know this sounds like wee woo vibes things, but let me explain. With the 5D SR, which is what I was using for camera scanning, I was using that with the 100mm L macro. When you get the image looks pretty good. When you punch in though, you can see that there is a grain to it. And it looks all right. It looks not bad on the camera scan, but without, well, having it in isolation, I probably wouldn't care. But I now have the Coolscan 8000. And if I scan the same image on the 8000 and I put them side by side, almost every time I pick the Coolscan 8000 image. The look of the image, the texture of the film, if you will, pops much more on the Coolscan 8000. Not that the camera scan looks bad, but the Coolscan looks better. And I already have it, so I'm gonna use it. I like it. Sorry, I know. After explaining all the crap that I went through to get the Coolscan 8000 running, you'd think there's more to the excellence than I likes it more. But that's really it. The camera scan mostly gets you there. But the Coolscan, for me, I find, just looks that tiny bit better. And it looks a lot better than the Plustek. And it honestly makes me sad that Nikon stopped making these things. They stopped making the Coolscan series, I think, after the 9000. Recommendation and conclusion. Am I saying that everyone should go get a Coolscan 8000? No, not even close. I happen to be very lucky. I bought this long ago with my brother. It's about 15 years, more than 15 years ago, I believe. And we got it for, I think, less than 800 Canadian dollars, which is crazy. But I'm being honest. I happen to have the option to use the Coolscan. I happen to have the ability to not look at film scans in isolation of one or the other. I can choose between which type of scanning method I want to do. But as a result of that, moving forward, you're going to see a lot of scans coming from this device. But let's be frank. All right, I'm frank now. And as frank, I really just can't recommend this scanner. The prices for these is horrendous. You're looking at, on average, around $1,200 to $1,800 USD. These are expensive. And not only that, you have to watch out for the ones that you're looking at, because they might not come with all the film trays you want. And if you think that for a second that you're going to get a steal of a deal by buying just the film scanner, but no trays, because you can just buy trays afterwards, you are in for a shock. These film trays might as well be bars of space whale vomit. They're very expensive and rare. Sometimes rarer than the scanner itself. And on average, this means that, as I said, you're going to be paying $1,200 to $1,800 USD, which costs more than the entire 5D SR camera scanning setup. And is it better? To me, yes, but maybe not to everyone. Additionally, the Coolscan 8000 isn't exactly common these days. Finding them can be challenging. Between the 8000 series and the 9000 series scanners on everyone's favorite online auction site, I'm seeing maybe just 12 units on the entire site that would ship to my location. It's not exactly a lot of choice. There aren't that many of them. Plus, I just explained the hassle of getting this thing up and running. Do you have a computer that has a FireWire 400 port? Are you willing to crack one of these things open to do work on it? Because at this point, a lot of these are 25 years old. You'll have to do maintenance on it eventually. And yeah, I get it. Not everyone is going to want to work on their expensive film gear. That's fair. So yeah, it's hard to recommend these things. For me, would I buy one again? Probably not at the price they're going for, but if I could find a deal and knowing that I can open these up and work on them, sure, I'd do it. But understandably, that's not for everyone. But that said, the Coolscan is very cool. It scans medium format film, and that sounds awesome. But it also means, as you saw, it's heavy. It's large. Well, maybe you didn't see the heaviness, but you saw the largeness. So you need to have a space to put this thing. And unlike a camera scanning kit, that can actually take photos. The Coolscan is a one-trick pony. But if you do come across one of these things that isn't $1 billion, if you have a computer with a FireWire 400 port or are willing to buy the card to add one to a desktop or whatever, if you're willing to put up with the maintenance, the foibles, then sweet holy guacamole, it's going to give you some good scans. But for everyone else, the camera scan honestly gets you 95% there. But I want that 5%. But yeah, camera scanning is accessible. It's easy. It's potentially considerably cheaper. And with that, I think the next time we talk about film scanning, we're probably going to go over some camera scanning or some alternatives to things like the Coolscan. And, maybe offer up some real, actual advice rather than gushing over some hard to find, expensive gear. But let me know. What do you do for film scanning currently? Do you camera scan? Do you flatbed scan? Do you have a dedicated film scanner? Do you have a drum scanner? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, maybe a super thanks if you're into that. Till next time, bye.